Did you know that archaeologists recently discovered 14,000-year-old breadcrumbs? This discovery rewrote human history. It turns out we started baking bread even before we learned agriculture. But here's the more important question. Which bread will help you live longer after 60? Scientific fact. Research shows that after 60, insulin sensitivity decreases and the risk of developing type 2 diabetes nearly triples. That's why the type of bread you eat becomes especially crucial. Drop a comment with which bread you eat most often, and I'll tell you if it's right for you. 5 beneficial breads after 65. Ezekiel bread. This unique bread is based on a biblical recipe from Ezekiel 4:9 and contains 6 types of sprouted grains: wheat, barley, lentils, soybeans, millet, and spelt. Mind-blowing fact, without sprouting, up to 90% of polyphenols in grains wouldn't be absorbed by your body. The sprouting process makes these powerful antioxidants available to your system. Each slice contains 5 grams of protein, more than most regular breads, and it's complete protein with all 9 essential amino acids. Perfect for older adults who need to maintain muscle mass. 4. Sprouted grain bread. This bread undergoes a unique preparation process. Grains are soaked until they begin to sprout, activating enzymes and changing the nutritional profile. Scientific evidence. The sprouting process partially breaks down starch in grains, reducing carbohydrate content. A study found that sprouted grain bread had the lowest available carbs, 34 grams per serving compared to 44 grams in 12-grain bread. A 2012 study showed that consuming sprouted grain bread was the best choice for blood sugar control in overweight men compared to white, sourdough, and even whole grain breads tested. 3. Authentic sourdough bread. Sourdough bread is made using wild yeast and lactic acid bacteria that ferment the dough for many hours. Real research. The glycemic index of sourdough wheat bread is 54, significantly lower than 71 for regular white and whole grain bread. A meta-analysis of 18 clinical studies showed that sourdough bread consumption has less impact on blood glucose control 60 minutes after eating. Cool historical fact. Ancient Gauls and Iberians used foam skimmed from beer to create a lighter kind of bread than other people's. This was one of the first methods of natural fermentation. 2. Whole grain rye bread. Rye contains a special type of soluble fiber called arabinoxylans, which work like a trap for cholesterol in the intestines. Proven effects. In a controlled study with 40 participants, rye bread was more effective at lowering cholesterol levels in men than wheat bread, reducing total cholesterol by 14% and bad LDL cholesterol by 12%. Studies have shown that rye bread causes a lower insulin response in the postprandial phase without affecting glucose levels. This phenomenon is called the rye factor. Did you know the next bread on our list can reduce overall mortality by 19%? Keep watching. 1. Whole grain bread. The king of our list. Whole grains contain all parts of the grain: bran, germ, and endosperm. Major studies. A meta-analysis of 45 studies showed that consuming 90 g of whole grain products daily, equivalent to 3 servings, is associated with a 19% relative risk reduction for overall mortality, 22% for cardiovascular disease, and 15% for cancer. The Framingham Heart Study with 3,121 people over 18 years showed that participants who ate at least 3 servings of whole grains daily had smaller increases in waist circumference, blood pressure, and blood sugar levels. Amazing fact, bread crust contains more dietary fiber and antioxidants like pronolysine than the crumb, so that old wives' tale about eat your crust for curly hair actually has scientific backing. 4. White bread. White bread is stripped of bran and germ, which contain most of the nutrients and fiber. Scientific evidence. A Harvard study of over 200,000 adults showed a link between consuming ultra-processed foods, including white bread, and a 17% increased risk of cardiovascular disease. White bread's glycemic index reaches 75/90, causing sharp blood sugar spikes. 3. Sweet pastries and donuts. The combination of refined flour, sugar, and trans fats creates a metabolic storm in your body. Established risks. High sugar and refined carbohydrate content is linked to insulin resistance and inflammatory processes, especially dangerous for people over 60. 2. Potato bread. Despite seeming natural, potato bread often contains potato flakes and starch that are absorbed very quickly. Glycemic effect. Potato starch has one of the highest glycemic indexes among all bread ingredients, often exceeding 85. 1. Gluten-free starch bread, the most deceptive product on our list. Many people think gluten-free means healthy. Reality check. Most gluten-free breads are made from rice starch, tapioca, and potato starch, which have an even higher glycemic index than white bread. These starches are absorbed instantly, causing extreme glucose spikes. Historical facts that will amaze you. 14,000-year-old breadcrumbs from Jordan showed our ancestors were baking bread before agriculture developed. Maybe our love of bread actually drove us to start farming. In ancient Rome, bread quality determined social status. The rich ate white bread while the poor ate dark whole grain. Today it's completely reversed. Roman poet Juvenal coined the phrase, bread in circuses, to describe how politicians controlled people by meeting their basic needs. The phrase, the greatest thing since sliced bread, exists because sliced bread was actually invented in 1928 by Otto Rohwedder. It was genuinely revolutionary. Practical tips. Always read ingredients. Whole grain flour should be the first ingredient. Choose bread with at least 3 g of fiber per slice. Store quality bread in the freezer to maintain freshness. Preservative-free breads like Ezekiel are stored frozen and can be toasted straight from the freezer. Which bread surprised you the most? And which historical fact did you find most interesting? Share in the comments. Your questions help create new helpful videos. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. We have many more science-backed tips for healthy longevity coming your way.